Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. I'd like you to welcome back the author of the website checktheevidence.com, Andrew Johnson. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for inviting me back, Richard.
Now, last week and the week before, we spoke all about the moon, and this week we're going to talk about Mars. Now, we saw some footage of Buzz Aldrin talking about the Apollo craft being followed to the moon by a UFO. He's made other statements about Phobos. Just tell us about that, Andrew.
Yeah, well, this is very peculiar, and I think surprised a lot of people. And he comes out on C-SPAN, which is a US cable channel, saying that there's a monolith being discovered on Phobos, and this should reinvigorate the space program. That we should right. Go and investigate this.
Just to explain that, a monolith is kind of a statue which has got rectangular.
It's like a large slab.
A large slab, and Phobos is a moon of Mars, so it is a celestial body which orbits around the planet Mars.
Right.
Quite small, only about 15 miles across, shaped like a large potato, effectively. And in this next clip, we hear Aldrin making that claim.
If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now, and I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again for human habitation on the moon. We can help, we can join with, together we can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there.
All right, now this sparked items in national newspapers after he'd said this, and in particular I saw the Mail Online article.
Well, again, if you read the actual article, I mean, we were talking about this last night, and it is a little bit confusing when you read the article, because there are several pictures shown in the article, and we'll show these on the screen, but it appears that one of them is indeed on Phobos, but it looks more like a large mound than a monolith, and then there's another monolith image, which is actually, I found out through further research, is in Valles Marineris on the surface of Mars. So it's odd that Aldrin would confuse these two things, and I don't even know whether one was originally released at one time and one at another time. And then there is a third image in this Daily Mail article, and we can probably bring these images up on the screen. We've got a third image in the Daily Mail article, and I looked and looked and looked for several hours to see if I could find a source for this third image. It doesn't look like a monolith. It looks more like a square looking post, and I could not find the original source for that image, whereas the one in Valles Marineris, I could give people the original NASA image link for that image, and indeed there is something which looks like a monolith there. And again, we've got this I made this little video clip of Phobos, and it appears there are lots of these things that look like monoliths. There are probably about 5 or 6 of them.
Right, so this is an image of the surface of Phobos that you've got from NASA, and you've made a little video sort of scanning from one area of Phobos to the other.
Correct.
And they've got quite long shadows on them.
Yes.
But we don't really know what they are.
Correct. And then we have an additional image, which we'll show from the European Space Agency, which appears to show the monolith on Phobos from a completely different angle. It's a colour image as opposed to this, this little video clip. It's black and white because the original image is black and white. But we have another ESA image, the European Space Agency, that is, from I believe it's Mars Express, showing this monolith from two separate images. Actually, it's very strange.
Just for viewers who might not be following the significance of this, according to official records, NASA nor anyone else from Earth has ever been to Mars or been to Phobos, so there shouldn't be anything man-made or on that particular.
Right. I mean, the whole situation with NASA is that there is no evidence of any other intelligence in the solar system other than on Earth. Any other object that we look at in the solar system, according to the official sort of NASA and other lines, all we're seeing is rocks. We may be seeing some other oddities, but if we are seeing other oddities, we have no information as to what they might be. That's the sort of official stance on these things.
Now, another interesting fact about Phobos is that it has been proven to be at least part hollow.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got this scientific paper which was released. I mean, again, this came up on a website recently, but I found out, as with a lot of these stories, these stories are several years old. They're put out as new stories, and they're not. They're several years old. And we have this scientific paper called "The Precise Mass Determination of and the Nature of Phobos." And this was published by, it's got about 5 authors. It was received 3rd of December 2009, revised 8th of March 2010, accepted 22nd of March 2010, and it was published 7th of May 2010 in the Geophysical Research Letters Journal, volume 37, L09202. And their conclusion in the abstract of this letter, which is like a short paper, it's not a full scientific paper, we conclude that the interior of Phobos likely contains large voids. When applied to various hypotheses bearing on the origin of Phobos, these results are inconsistent with the proposition that Phobos is a captured asteroid. And that information, as I understand it, comes from the studies of radar data, where they fired radar signals at Phobos and then got signals back. I mean,
they can actually calculate. They can calculate its mass based on its orbital period and
correct.
distance from the planet.
And then, if you look at the size of the object, and look at its density, you can the density. It's probably got a very low density overall.
Yeah.
So that means that it must be at least partly hollow.
Right. And that's not consistent with asteroids.
No,
asteroids are not hollow.
No.
Right. So there's something odd there.
There's something odd. There's a number of very odd things about Phobos.
Now, there was a Russian mission to Phobos in, I think, 1988. Two Russian craft unmanned, Phobos 1 and Phobos 2. Mysteriously, Phobos 1 was switched off and didn't reach its intended target. Phobos 2, again, went into trouble, and then it sent back some data. It sent back a very interesting shadow on the surface of Mars, which people were saying was a UFO, but
correct.
Other people have since said no, that was actually a shadow of Phobos. But as it was coming towards Phobos, it then malfunctioned. Is that
right? I mean, that's the gist of the story, and I'd heard this story, and I re-investigated that very recently. I've got this upcoming presentation at the end of March at the New Horizons Club in Lissington. So I wanted to do some re-investigation into the Phobos story. And this story obviously is comes out a lot, and it was that basically the Phobos 2, Phobos 1 was lost, as you said, probably due to human error. They accidentally switched it off and couldn't recover it. Phobos 2 was going towards Phobos, and then it took about a sequence of about 5 pictures, and they saw this object apparently coming towards Phobos 2, and this object was said by some to be a missile. And then they lost contact with it, so the sort of the implication was there that it was shot down. And these pictures were shown on Larry King Live, and there's a web article by Don Ecker which shows these pictures, or one of the pictures, but actually what it's showing you is rather a poor quality photocopy of this image, and I recently came across the original images as were seen on the Russian, on the Russian mission by the mission controllers, which we've got, and they show quite clearly that this apparent missile is actually some kind of video or digital artifact coming into the picture, because it sort of slowly comes across the picture, and then there's just basically a vertical line goes across the picture, so you can clearly see that that doesn't appear to be anything to do with a missile or anything like that. So that particular story, there's a bit of misinformation in it. Yes, indeed, Phobos 2 was lost, and we don't really know what happened to it. Right. But this, and also this thing about the shadow, the claim to photograph this weird ellipse on the surface of Mars. Well, it is now known what that is, and it is indeed the shadow of Phobos, and it's been photographed several times. And again, we've got a photograph of that here to show you that. And
there are rumours that Phobos is either artificial or used as a base of some kind. Can you expand on that at all?
Well, not really. I mean, we from this study with the radar data, that it does appear that it's hollow. One of the unusual features that we've got here in this particular image are these lines, going around Phobos, which look very unusual. We've got these sets of lines, some of them intersecting at right angles on the surface, so it does look very unusual. However, there is a scientific paper which I'm sort of halfway through looking at. I don't know whether I'll be able to understand all of it, but it shows a model for how these lines could have been created. And in simple terms, because Phobos is a relatively small object, as we said, 15 miles across, it's essentially got its own microgravity. So if you were to try and walk on the surface of Phobos, as soon as you sort of travelled more than half a metre per second, you'd have reached the escape velocity of Phobos and you'd start floating into space. So I think this paper proposes that these tracks are boulders that are sort of scraped against Phobos and then rolled around the side just in the microgravity, and that's what's created these lines. I don't know whether that's correct, but that's one of the more conventional explanations. The other, of course, is that what we're seeing is some surface feature of some underlying structure, some plates fixed together. I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied it enough to say one way or the other. But the unusual things are, it's very small. Its orbit is actually decaying. I think you can show that Phobos will only be orbiting Mars for the next 5,000 years or something, or 10,000 years, and then it'll crash into the surface because its orbit is decaying. And also that it appears to be hollow, and it was only discovered in about, I forget the exact date, but it was around about 1837 or not 1857 in the 19th century, which is odd because there are other objects which were as small as Phobos which had been seen within the solar system before then. So that's rather odd.
Okay, Andrew. Well, we're going for a quick break, and after the break we're going to show that NASA have actually found life on Mars. Rich Planet TV is coming to a town near you. In May 2013, I will be travelling around the UK, speaking at the following places: Gateshead, Glasgow, Leeds, Liverpool, Birmingham, Weston Super, Southampton, Reading and London. I'll be covering recent UFO reports, which is